Join us on Patreon and become part of our journey to uncover history's untold stories. Your support helps us create in-depth content, bring hidden narratives to life, and keep history alive for everyone.
It begins on the busy corners of Harlem, in the echoing chants of men clad in fringed garments, their voices fierce with conviction. It continues in the dusty pages of Bible, carried with pride and pored over in churches, street gatherings, and scholarly studies. The claim is radical but not new, that the true descendants of the ancient Israelites are not the people commonly associated with that identity today, but rather the scattered black descendants of Africa and the Americas. Known broadly as the Black Israelites or Hebrew Israelites, this movement has surged through more than a century of American religious and social history, raising profound questions about race, identity, lost heritage, and the legacy of slavery. Are the Black Israelites truly the children of Israel? To explore this question is to wade into the intertwined rivers of theology, history, anthropology, and geopolitics. The idea that African Americans are the descendants of the ancient Israelites is rooted in a rich tradition of biblical interpretation and historical reimagining that began in the 19th century and intensified during the 20th. This belief arose during a time of intense racial discrimination, colonization, and spiritual searching among people of African descent, particularly in the Americas. At its core, the ideology emerged as a reclamation of identity. In a society that had violently stripped black people of their languages, homelands, and histories, the concept of being God's chosen people offered dignity and divine purpose. The idea was both a spiritual declaration and a counter-narrative to centuries of dehumanization. The movement's early foundations can be traced to several key figures. One of the most important was Frank Cherry, a black man who founded one of the earliest Hebrew Israelite congregations in the United States in the late 19th century. Cherry claimed that African Americans were the true descendants of the ancient Hebrews, and that white Jews were impostors. Around the same time, another early leader, William Saunders Crowdy, a former slave and Union Army veteran, also preached that African Americans were descendants of the lost tribes of Israel. Crowdy established the Church of God and Saints of Christ in 1896, which fused Christianity with Hebrew customs and remains active to this day. As the movement evolved, it diversified into a variety of sects, each with its own teachings, rituals, and interpretations. Some groups adopt a strictly biblical lens, focusing on Torah observance and Jewish law. Others take a more militant or Afrocentric stance, emphasizing the injustices of slavery and systemic racism. The spectrum ranges from peaceful, religiously observant communities to controversial street preachers known for confrontational rhetoric. What unites many of these sects, however, is the core belief that the transatlantic slave trade was a fulfillment of biblical prophecy, that black people were sent into bondage as punishment for disobedience to God, akin to the Israelites' captivity in Egypt or Babylon. This interpretation finds resonance in key biblical passages. For instance, Deuteronomy 28, particularly verses 15 through 68, describes the curses that will befall the children of Israel if they disobeyed God's commandments: enslavement, exile, poverty, and a loss of identity. Verse 68 in particular is often cited by Black Israelites. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. For proponents of this theology, Egypt is symbolic of bondage, and the ships clearly reference the middle passage. From this perspective, the enslavement of Africans and their diaspora in the Americas is not merely a historical atrocity, it is a divine signal, proof of prophetic destiny. But beyond biblical exegesis, do historical or genetic evidences support the claim? The historical Israelites were a Semitic people who emerged in the Levant, modern-day Israel, and Palestine during the Late Bronze Age. Their culture, language, ancient Hebrew, and religious practices were distinct, though they were often influenced by surrounding peoples such as the Canaanites, Egyptians, and Babylonians. The genetic ancestry of modern Jews, especially Ashkenazi and Sephardi populations, has been extensively studied. These studies often show genetic continuity with Middle Eastern populations, albeit with some admixture from European and North African lineages. Yet, the history of ancient Israel is not confined to the borders of modern Judaism or the Levant. During the First and Second Temple periods, Israelites were exiled numerous times by the Assyrians, Babylonians, and later the Romans. The 10 lost tribes of Israel, said to have vanished after the Assyrian conquest of the northern kingdom in 722 BCE, have long fascinated historians and religious scholars. These tribes, according to some theories, migrated eastward or southward, perhaps even reaching the African continent. This opens the door to a range of alternative historical narratives. For example, the Lemba people of southern Africa, an ethnic group in Zimbabwe and South Africa, claim descent from ancient Israelites. DNA studies in the early 2000s found that a significant number of Lemba men carry the Cohen modal haplotype, a genetic signature associated with the Jewish priesthood, suggesting a historical connection to ancient Jewish populations. Although the Lemba are not part of the Black Israelite movement, their case shows how African groups may retain genuine ties to ancient Israel through both tradition and genetics. Furthermore, there is historical evidence of Jewish presence in Africa for centuries. Jews lived in Egypt since the time of the Hellenistic period and likely earlier. The Jewish community of Elephantine Island in Egypt, dating to the 5th century BCE, maintained their own temple and practiced Judaism, albeit with some local variation. In Ethiopia, the Beta Israel, Ethiopian Jews, practiced a form of Judaism for over a millennium before being recognized by the Israeli government as legitimate Jews under the law of return in the 20th century. Black Israelites often point to these examples as support for their claims, although mainstream historians usually distinguish between these historically grounded Jewish communities and the more theological or symbolic identity embraced by many African American Hebrews. Critics argue that while the spiritual and cultural reclamation inherent in the movement is powerful, it should not be confused with direct descent from ancient Israelites in a genetic or historical sense. Still, this critique overlooks an important truth. Identity is not only about bloodlines. It is also about belonging, belief, and continuity. For Black Israelites, asserting Hebrew identity is not merely a claim about ancestry. It is an assertion of dignity, spiritual inheritance, and divine justice. In a world that for centuries denied Black people a sense of history and agency, the embrace of the Israelite identity serves as a radical act of reclamation. In recent years, the movement has gained visibility through social media and pop culture. Public figures, athletes, and celebrities have brought attention to Hebrew Israelite ideologies, sometimes sparking controversy, but also encouraging wider public inquiry into the origins and beliefs of these communities. The movement continues to grow, diversify, and challenge both religious orthodoxy and societal narratives about race and faith. So, are the Black Israelites truly the children of Israel? Historically, genetically, and theologically, the answer is complex. The mainstream scholarly consensus does not affirm a direct biological descent from ancient Israelites to African Americans en masse. However, the question also demands a broader framework, one that considers identity not merely as a matter of blood, but as a tapestry of faith, memory, experience, and struggle. By this measure, the claim of being the true Israelites reflects more than just historical revisionism. It is a powerful statement about survival, heritage, and the enduring human desire to find one's place in the sacred story of the world.